So, wanted to talk a little bit about the point of total assumption. So it doesn't necessarily appear in the PMBOK, but there's questions on the PMP exam regarding this. And this comes up when you're using the fixed price incentive fee type of a contract. So to understand the point of total assumption, you have to have a good understanding of the fixed price incentive fee contract. In this type of contract, the buyer is going to agree to pay a fixed price, and there's going to be a maximum price set. There's a ceiling. Beyond that ceiling, if the cost increases more, it's most likely going to be because the contractor did some sort of mismanagement on their end. So therefore, we shouldn't have to bear any of those costs due to their poor management. So on the other hand, if the contractor finishes at a lower cost, usually there's some sort of incentive, so they can achieve greater profits, for example. So let's look at an example here. So the PTA, it's defined as the point of the total contract cost, and I want to be clear here, the total contract cost is not the contract price necessarily. So the contract cost plus the buyer fee is the contract price. So the total contract cost, so that's the cost to the contractor. So the PTA is the point where the total contract cost at which any additional cost overruns are solely borne by the contractor. So they're no longer shared. Okay, so here's the formula to to identify what the PTA is. And the PTA is going to be equal to your ceiling price minus the target price divided by the buyer share ratio plus the target cost. Okay, so we're going to go over that. It's not as confusing as it sounds. So here's the example. So we have a procurement with a target cost, a fixed price incentive fee contract with a target cost of $1 million. The buyer's fee is $100,000. So add $1 million of cost for this particular contract, the contractor will make $100,000. So the total contract cost will be $1.1 million. So the buyer's share ratio, there's two. For overruns, the buyer will pay 80% of the overruns. For underruns, the buyer will pay 50%. And there's a ceiling on the contract of $1.3 million. So we're going to find the PTA. And in this particular example, $1.3 million is the ceiling, minus $1.1 million is the target price. So that's the contract price. It's $1 million of target cost plus the buyer's fee. So in the numerator we have $200,000 divided by the buyer share ratio of the overrun, which is 0.8, plus the target cost of $1 million. So we get the point of total assumption is at 1.25 million. Now I'm going to explain that so you understand it a little bit better. Here's a graphic of what the previous example would look like, and it illustrates the idea behind the point of total assumption. So there's some significant pieces to discuss on this chart, and they each correspond with either an intersection or a change in slope. The first, here with a relatively flatter slope, shows where you are sharing in the cost underruns at a different rate than the overruns. So if you remember in the example, the buyer share ratio was 50% for underruns instead of 80%. So this is to incent the contractor to produce efficiently and effectively by allowing them to earn greater profits by keeping their costs lower. But you also benefit by not paying as much. The point where the slope changes right there is the targeted cost plus the fee, or the total contract price at the target cost. So if I were to hover over here, this is going to be where the slope changes. The project cost is going to be right here, is going to be $1 million, and the total contract price is going to be 1.1 million. That's our target. That's exactly where we want to be. So then you see that the slope changes. It becomes a little bit steeper. This is the 80%. This represents the 80% of the buyer's share ratio. So this is where you share in the cost overruns. Again, different rate than the underruns, which is why you have a change in slope. This represents, from here to here, represents the range where you are sharing in the risk of the cost overruns. So from here to here. This point here is where you reach the max contract price. This is the point of total assumption. So at this particular point, this contract price is $1.3 million. That's the ceiling. Well, the calculation that we just did figures the project cost at this PTA is $1.25 million. Okay, so the other way that you're going to use this, all of this information, so here's where the two lines intersect in this particular example. The area between these two lines right here, this is the contractor's profit. The area under these two lines here, to the right of the where they intersect, this represents losses for the contractor. And so why is all this important? Well, it's important because this, as the project manager, you are going to be looking to monitor very closely as you move forward to the point of total assumption, because at this point this is a risk trigger, and at this point you want to make sure that the contractor is going to be completing their work. Once they start getting back here, they're not very motivated to complete the deliverables because they're losing money. So you want to try and keep them, as the project manager, in this area.